Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. My name is Heidi and I work to coordinate you all with SRECs with Sunday Solar. We are currently partnering with two SREC brokerage. One is Sol Systems and the other one is SunTribe Trading, which Ian is the director of Solar Renewable Energy Credits from SunTribe Trading. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to try and answer them all at the end. But if we see multiple people asking the same questions, I'll just shout it out to Ian and ask him to answer. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you enjoy. I'm going to kick it off to Ian.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to present this. I know it's a group effort, like in the industry, to try to really inform people about SRECs, and so hopefully you'll come out of this today with everything answered, and you'll feel really confident about negotiating SRECs and making good decisions at the end of the day. So I'm going to share my screen from my presentation. Like Heidi said, my name is Ian Ayers. I work for SunTribe Trading. We are we're a small kind of like fourth biggest aggregator in the country right now. We just started last year in Virginia, and so we're kind of specialists in the Virginia market for SRECs. And so I'm going to speak from a position also of being somebody who's new to SRECs. I started doing this last summer, and so I've had to answer a lot of the same questions you are. So hopefully I'll do a good job of presenting this in a simple way. But I'll take about 15 minutes to walk through some slides. If you have questions, like Heidi said, put them in the chat and we'll get them at the end. And so there'll be plenty of time for that. And I do not think we'll use the whole time allotted on the calendar invite to do this. So, all right, so we'll start it off. So solar renewable energy certificates, and what I like to call them certificates, because I think that's more true to what they are as opposed to credits. SRECs are different from other kind of credits that you might get in the process of getting your solar system put in, right? So you might have energy credited on your utility bill, your Dominion bill. That is totally separate from SRECs. Nothing about how you consume energy affects your ability to get the full value of your SRECs. And then some of you may have already cashed in or are considering, if you're considering putting in a system, you may already have accounted for tax credits. Those are separate from SRECs. So a solar renewable energy certificate is a digital certificate that you can get that your system is capable of producing and minting only if your system is registered in an entity whose responsibility is to make these digital certificates. And so some of you, depending on where you're at in your registration process or your history with your system, you may already be registered with another broker who's registered your system in the registrar. And I will describe some ways to find out where you are in that process. We can talk more about that at the end, because there may be some edge cases there that we can go through. But essentially, you need to get your system registered to make these certificates. And we're going to go all the way through the process of what that looks like and why. But some basics. So renewable energy certificate, or you may hear them called credits, RECs. One REC represents 1 megawatt hour of energy produced, which is 1,000 kilowatts. Most of your systems report energy produced in kilowatt hours. And so a REC itself, it represents something specific. It not only represents that much energy was made, but it represents the attribute of that energy that was made of being green, right? Being renewable. So it's basically proof that so much energy was made and it counts as a renewable amount of energy. So, and just some terminology, a kilowatt is different than a kilowatt hour. So if you have a 10 kilowatt DC system, this is a measurement of power or system's capacity, whereas a 10 kilowatt system, if it runs for its full capacity in this very basic example for 2 hours, that's 20 kilowatt hours of energy, right? That's going to be produced, right? And so what RECs are used to differentiate electricity. So once electricity flows onto the power grid, it's impossible to differentiate from where it came. just like rivers or streams flowing into a lake, it all gets mixed in together. You really can't tell where the energy is coming from. RECs, SRECs, are a way for that to happen. So, the energy that comes from these arrays here, if a certificate is generated for those, you can use that to substantiate a fact, a truth about that energy. And those certificates are used in various ways to substantiate and differentiate that energy from other sources. In this case, in Virginia and in other states, SRECs are used to substantiate compliance with a goal. So in 2020, in Virginia, the VCEA, Virginia Clean Economy Act, was signed into law with the goal of being 100% clean energy by 2050. And I think clean is obviously not a officially defined term, but in this case, it also includes nuclear energy, essentially to try to get us on a low carbon output. So in 2020, very, very little of the grid was solar. As you can see here, it's increasing. It's mostly natural gas and nuclear. So this legislation is really trying to increase that substantially. And every year, that percentage of renewables goes up. And in Virginia, of the percentage that needs to be renewable, a 1% of that target in any given year is allocated to this piece of the legislation called the solar carve-out, whereby the utility is going to need to demonstrate that they have purchased SRECs from solar systems, and the SRECs are what proves that percentage of the portfolio is coming from that carve-out category. And so that's essentially what's happened to create an additional value for SRECs in Virginia, where it wasn't the case before. Some people were selling you could have created your SRECs in Virginia and sold them potentially into another state. Some other states had cross eligibility, but this is a new thing where now there's a market in Virginia for the RECs here. And so aggregators, companies like SunTribe or SREC Trade or Sol Systems, they essentially buy and sell RECs. So if you have a solar system on your home, your residence, you are a generator owner. You are the owner of a system, and unless for some odd reason in your contract, somebody else has already pre-claimed the title to your SRECs, you are by default, as the system owner, also the owner of these SRECs. And so if you get your system registered, those SRECs can be essentially sold. And the marketplace that the VCEA created has made it such that aggregators help create the liquidity in the market. We do the work of getting the supply of the RECs and essentially bundling them and selling them back to the bulk buyers. And that's a service that we provide. The bulk buyer in this case, for example, think Dominion Energy. They're going to be buying these thousands, tens of thousands of RECs at a time. They're not working directly with system owners. That's just not their business. That's the job of the aggregator, to go through the tedious work of educating, explaining, registering systems, collecting energy, dealing with what happens when there's energy reporting issues, dealing with the contracts, doing the payments, all the stuff that happens in the middle. And so the aggregator makes money and provides that service so that this whole system can happen. And so aggregators often buy SRECs from owner. Let me step back for a second. And so when you sell your SRECs, you are essentially selling away your ability to make a factual claim that your system, the system that you own, is making renewable energy, right? So it's like the attribute of the energy, the renewable nature of it. When you sell your SREC, somebody else gets to claim that. In this case, it's the ultimate buyer, which is Dominion. So an SREC in its life cycle, when it's created, can exist. It can change hands. The title of it can change hands. And essentially, the one owner can decide to retire the REC. In that case, it's done. A claim is kind of officially can be made against that REC once the REC is retired. You might ask, well, I don't know if I want to sell away the claim to be able to say I have a renewable system on my roof or my house or my small business or what have you. many people have a thought about that. They say, huh, that might have some sort of effect on what I'm trying to do. For most people, the decision is, yeah, I mean, this is an important, the funds that I get from selling my SRECs is a critical component to enabling me doing this system in the first place. And so for those that have a question about what does it mean as a residential homeowner to sell your SRECs and sell away this attribute of the energy to make claims, it might not mean much for you at all. It might mean something for others. We can talk through that. But effectively, if you're worried about some sort of enforcement for that at the residential scale, it's not really a thing that I've heard about. But if you have a large company that sells all their SRECs for profit, and they have on their website, hey, we're 100% solar, and they've sold their SRECs, yeah, there's a conflict there. And so there are bodies that try to catch that and deal with that, because SRECs represent something real and binding. Okay, so aggregators often buy SRECs from owners in several ways. Sometimes you can lock in a price for a period of years into the future, like SunTribe Trading has a 3-year annuity plus and a 5-year annuity plus contract. We have a 15-year upfront contract, and we have a spot market contract that we brand the mint and sell contract. The reason why there are different ways to sell RECs are many, but some people would like all the money up front. The upfront price, you get it all in hand, that's your money. If any laws change or any issues happen, or you have to deal with, any number of contingencies, sometimes the upfront is as simple and it makes sense. You can go buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin, buy the dip, whatever you want to do, and you got the money now. For others, there may be a choice between, do I want to be on the spot market, or do I want to lock in a fixed price for every SREC my system generates? And there's a trade-off there. So in the spot market right now in Virginia, it's a higher price than these annuity prices. But the spot market price could go down over time. It's definitely going to go down based on the market mechanics that I can explain later, because the supply is going to outpace the demand based on all projections. But there may be other things that precipitously can cause the spot market price to drop precipitously, and then it might make a lot of sense to have signed a 3-year contract where the price is 60% or 70 or 80% of the spot market price, but you get that over time. So it's kind of a hedge against the risk. Also, our annuity products have a little bonus, and we call it Annuity Plus, because we'll send a bigger upfront amount if you sign those contracts. So we'll send the first year of payments once you sign the contract, and then you're paid quarterly for RECs in the annuity product. And I have more details about this. So as of today, and again, you can compare with other aggregators. You have multiple options out there. The 3 and the 5-year prices is 51 for the 3-year, 38 for the 5-year. For the 15-year, it's priced not per REC, but by your system size. That's at 228 per kilowatt DC. So you just multiply your system size DC times 228. And there's an option to sell on the spot market using our mint and sell. And currently, that really should say June 22nd, but the price is $64 REC that we have published. That may go up between now and the next purchase that we make. But essentially, on the mint and sell option, you're creating RECs. These SRECs go into your inventory, and we'll auto purchase your RECs at a market clearing price at a given time. It might not happen every month, might happen every 2 months. There's some variability of when your aggregator finds the best price to sell your RECs, but that's essentially what's happening on the mint and sell. We're selling your RECs at the most favorable price at a non-fixed time interval, whereas the 3 and the 5-year are fixed time interval, and the 15-year is once upfront. So that describes the price variability. In terms of payments, quarterly is the payment term for the annuity, but since you're getting a year upfront, the first quarterly payment is not until 2023. That's a detail you can see on the contract. And roughly, this is what we're seeing in terms of customers in Virginia choosing among these contracts. You're seeing about 2/3 choose the annuity style, and about 1/3 choose the mint and sell, and a few choosing the upfront at this point. You may have questions that are more detailed than what I've presented, so we'll make sure to get those quickly. We're almost through the presentation here. The next question that we get is like, how often do I get, how often or how much time does it take in order to get a payment? So it takes about six weeks to get a payment in all situations. Essentially, once you sign a contract, get that sorted out, we kind of have a time period where we gather system details, make sure that everything's right. We make sure that we can get access to the energy data that your system is producing. Then we register your system. In Virginia, we're going to register with PJM GATS, the Generation Attribute Tracking System, which serves the Mid-Atlantic states and some Northeast states. Once your registration is approved, then we submit energy through GATS for your system. And then after a number of days, the SRECs are created or minted. And then those SRECs are kind of associated with your account at SunTribe. Depending on your contract style, that will dictate when the payment and how it is deposited and at what price is paid. So again, there's some variability in this generally, and it can go faster. SRECs are generated on a monthly cadence at PJM GATS, where the month rolls around, we have a couple of days to submit energy, and if the energy is submitted to your system before X day, the 5th, 6th day of the month, then you'll get that in time to generate the RECs for that month. And so that's what there's always a kind of a delayed process where we kind of do batch registration and get everybody in for the next month, and then that happens on a monthly cadence. So that's the high level look at SRECs. And so just to kind of sum up, or to kind of circle back to where I started, if you're already signed up with an aggregator, that's great. You can stick with that aggregator. You can also switch. It's not as painful as it's made out to be, as long as all parties are responsive. You can get a possibly better price. You can do it. If you're thinking about getting a system, then obviously the ability to estimate what you're going to make is important in that decision process. So we have a tool that I'll demo in a second that helps you see the value of your SRECs. And I think I answered all these other questions. So my goal today is just help you be informed and work with your installer. Because of the information that we need as the aggregator to gather to register your system, we work with installers to kind of get the basics about your system so that the installer, in conjunction with the aggregator, can present you some clear set of choices, so you're not left on your own to register. And even though the installer might refer you, you can also just go to any number of the aggregators' websites and fill out their forms and do it yourself. I should also mention that you could go to PJM GATS and register your own generator, create a single user account, and generate your own RECs, report your energy directly into your PJM GATS account, and then you're looking to basically look to sell your RECs per year to an aggregator or a buyer. That's a bit more work. People might not want to buy 12 RECs at one time from an individual user through a inter-GATS transfer, but SunTribe actually does honor that, and we would work with somebody if they wanted to do that. Wanted to mention that. So let me demo. Oh yeah, sorry, a couple more questions. Almost there. Does my system make SRECs automatically? Not if you're not registered, and not if you're not on automated energy reporting to make the SRECs. It will pretty much make SRECs automatically as long as you're registered and that energy that's coming from your inverter through the monitoring platform gets transmitted to GATS in the proper method. They're not on your power bill. Oh yeah, this one comes up a lot. My system's been online since 2020. Can I get all the energy I've made, all those megawatt hours? I've made 25 megawatt hours. Can I get SRECs? Only for the energy produced from the current beginning of this calendar year till today, or till now. The backlog that you've already made can be eligible to make SRECs. We can't do it for previous years, unfortunately. Where do I get energy meter readings? A company like SunTribe has a lot of automations. We can talk to your inverter directly, or the monitoring through Enphase or SolarEdge or Fronius or SMA or these different inverters. Some we might have to do by hand if there's an exception. Are SREC payments taxable? SunTribe Trading is not going to report, but we're not going to create 1099s or anything. So it's up to you. It's just regular income that you would be responsible to report. And finally, which option should you choose in terms of how you want to sell your SRECs? That's really ultimately left up to you based on the information I provide. So let me, I'm going to pause my screen here and I'm going to share one other thing so you can get a sense of what our particular portal looks like when you're referred. I'm going to bring this over here. Okay, I think you can see my screen now. So if you're referred to SunTribe and some basic system information is provided to us by your installer, we're going to present to you in a visual way the 4 different options that we offer to sell your SRECs. You can also get to this screen by going to suntribetrading.com and clicking the big button that says generate payout options. And you can enter your system information yourself to get to this particular screen. But essentially, if we know your system size, we know address and some other information, we can create for you these options that show you when, basically how much energy you'd be making over in a period of a year. Like a 12 kilowatt system makes roughly 14.5 SRECs a year. We use a conservative way to estimate how many RECs we think you're going to make. We'll tell you the price per SREC and your total estimated 3-year earnings if your system is performing based on our estimate assumptions. Also tell you how much is paid at contract signing. We pay a year in advance plus any backlog for these annuity style contracts. Here's the 5-year, 15 years is a single upfront payment. Again, this is computing it differently. It's an upfront price. And then we have our spot market contract, the mint and sell contract, whereby you're going to be paid the market price, which changes. But essentially, in this situation, this contract, you can move from this kind of contract to another contract. They may be differently priced, but you can move out of this one. It's like a 10-year default contract, but if you give notice, then we could switch it. You can move to a different aggregator. You're not locking in anything by going with the mint and sell contract. And then once you select one of these contracts, you can view the contract associated with it by just clicking it and view the terms. SunTribe Trading, when we started, we wanted to make this whole system so it's more visual. You can do more self-service. You can see the prices. The pricing isn't hidden. You don't have to make a phone call. It's all right on our website and transparent, as well as the contract. Some of the other companies, you'll get a contract and all the details are like buried in kind of legal looking tables or phrases and clauses. We've tried desperately to make this much clearer on how we operate and what the terms of our contract are. And you can just sign it right here. And once you sign that, that kicks off a whole process by which we'll get you registered and get you ultimately paid. So I'm going to pause that for now and transition to Q&A. Let me open up the chat. And yeah, we can open up the floor to any questions that you have. All right. Let's see, Cheryl looks like she wrote a question. Virginia utility scale electricity mix, is that produced in Virginia but doesn't count? What is produced outside of VA but used in Virginia? I don't think I can answer that question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess the question was a little bit more, I was curious with the VCEA, and I know it's kind of a side conversation to what you're presenting here. And by the way, great presentation, Ian. That was really excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Absolutely.
But I was just kind of curious. I know VCEA mandated renewable electricity in Virginia, by 2050, and utility scale generators, investor-owned utilities are required to meet certain goals, right? So I've always been curious. So I'm thinking that is a goal set for what's produced in Virginia. But I was always kind of curious about that. Could conceivably, as one of the risks of that goal, that no generation occurs,
so
or very limited, and it all gets moved out of Virginia potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So the state is required to also buy RECs for generation, and the RECs need to be made in state for the broader category. So the solar carve out, those all have to be in Virginia, and starting in 2025, all of the RECs to substantiate renewable have to be actually certified with a state certification number and serialized in Virginia. So I think from that perspective, there's a good deal of protection that ensures that the new renewable generation comes online in Virginia, and it's not necessarily coming from elsewhere. There's not a provision in which in the long run, Virginia is able to purchase SRECs or renewable energy from other states to meet its compliance goals. That's not my understanding.
I was also curious. So SunTribe Trading, is that a subsidiary of SunTribe? Because SunTribe also does, I guess, utility scale solar installations.
Yeah, it's I don't know if subsidiary is the right word. I guess it's part of the collection of companies that fall under the SunTribe brand. Yeah, there's this SunTribe Development, which does larger utility scale projects, and then we have SunTribe Solar, which does EPC work and builds large solar sites. We got our start doing smaller systems, small commercial, some residential here and there, and just have kind of satisfied the growing demand for larger and larger systems. We do the most school top installations in education, K through 12, and in Virginia. So that's the size of the systems that we're building. We have a lot of in the portfolio, kind of sub-megawatt, and doing a lot more large systems. So it's very clear we have a very front seat and have an active role in actually building out a lot of the solar capacity in Virginia, and it's just a great place to do that. And so, yeah, that part of the reason for doing SunTribe Trading was, because we're kind of close to a lot of this, and SRECs factor into making projects viable, but also seeing that there's a real need in the market to do things like provide great customer service, to innovate how SRECs are bought and sold, and all the rest. And so we're kind of going, honestly, we're just kind of going with the market, and SunTribe is a great place to do that.
And so do you frequently, it sounded like from the presentation, and I know others may have questions, and I'll be quiet here in a second, but it sounds like you often work directly with the installers, the smaller installers now of the residential solar systems. Can you, or are you at liberty to name, some of the companies that you tend to work with in Virginia, and more specifically the middle part of Virginia, like Charlottesville, Richmond area?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a referral from nearly every solar installer in Virginia, or I mean, there are many that are kind of like on the fringe, but I mean, we get people from all different companies. At some point, when an installer realizes that SunTribe Trading is a great alternative in addition to SREC Trade or Sol systems, then when their customers say, who should I go with? They'll say, well, I can refer you, and sometimes we become the default referrer. But we work with Segura, we work with Tiger, we work with a number of, and this is not, I don't think it's like confidential, but the growing list of Central Virginia installers is growing really fast with SunTribe Trading. And again, I'm trying to tell everybody, like, you don't have to go with us, even though the installer has done the convenient step of submitting, for example, detailed array information with tilt and azimuth and all those characteristics. That's really just a convenience to you, so that you have a good place to compare alternatives. I mean, I think it would also be confusing if installer submitted you to multiple places, because then it if you have bad actors or just people who are registering, parallel paths, one's going with SREC Trade, one's going with this one, and it gets really confusing for all parties involved. So I think it's by default, the installer wants to kind of say, here's the one that we generally provide information to. Unless you want to go with another, go with this one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Okay, Jacob Woods asked the question: is there a time associated with SRECs? Does the value of an SREC change in the date produced? A 2020 SREC is larger environmental mitigation compared to a 2030 SREC. A lot in there. Is there a time associated with an SREC? So an SREC is this digital certificate, has a unique serial number. It has a date of from which month, in which month it was generated. So in that sense, yes, there's a time associated with an SREC. It was finitely produced in a particular month with a particular number associated with your registered generator. And so we often, like in the industry, we call it vintage. So like there's a vintage 2020 or 2021 or vintage 2022 RECs, and they're based on calendar year in Virginia. For other states, they might be like, June to July, like a different fiscal or a different calendar. But essentially, yes, you have a year. And does the value of an SREC change with the date produced? Generally not like the month it was produced in that year, but certainly the vintage year can change the value of it substantially. So like a 1999 REC before there was the VCEA was of lesser value than one produced now. So you could make an SREC and it could sit in your GATS account and you wouldn't sell it or trade it, and it would probably, in Virginia, it would diminish over time because of supply and demand economics. But that SREC is only valid for Virginia to use for compliance for a period of 5 years. They can bank an SREC for 5 years. So if Dominion wanted to buy a 2021 REC and wait to retire it until 2024 or 2025, it could do that. So that is a dynamic that would sometimes affect the pricing of those RECs. But they're really not like, I use the word vintage, but they're not necessarily like a wine where the longer you hold it, the more valuable it becomes, because an SREC it's fresh. You want to show like this was produced in this year, it's going toward substantiating a particular claim in this year or near to that year. And so to answer your question, does a 2020 SREC is larger environmental mitigation compared to a 2030 SREC? Not necessarily. It's like, if you think about like, there's a concept of a carbon offset where, you plant a tree, it takes carbon out of the environment, all else held the same. If you build a new solar plant, the additionality of capacity that represents in there, the reduction in the need for a non-environmentally friendly plant, you can have a straight line or comparable mitigation measure there. But with SRECs, once the system comes online and it's producing SRECs, those SRECs are being used to substantiate the fact that renewable energy was made, and it has more to do with, I think, in practical terms, the claims that are made against that energy than it is the SREC itself, in and of itself, having an environmental mitigation effect. Not sure if that answers your question, but feel free to follow up if you want me to touch. Again, I am the expert in the room. I cannot answer all these questions as elegantly as I'm sure some other web resources can, but I think that probably moved the needle a little bit. Does anybody have any follow-ups on that?
I had another question.
Hey, Mike.
So I installed my own system. So
congrats.
Thank you. So I actually a while back went to Seoul because I just heard about it, and I hit a problem trying to calculate my azimuth. So you said that you guys work with installers, and so I just basically stopped dealing with it, and then a buddy of mine told me about this seminar, and here I am. But would you guys be willing to work with somebody who just did their own to get registered?
Yeah, we've done it for I think 7 or 8. It's always inspirational too, because it's just awesome you've done it. What's important is that we can get that information from you. If you don't have the exact azimuth and tilt, it is not gonna, it's not gonna spoil. Yeah.
Sorry, tilt's pretty easy. I put it on a 712 roof. So
yeah,
I can give you the angle. I can give you the, direction. It was just, I got online and I typed in how to calculate azimuth, and I was like, yeah, let's
yeah, we can, you can estimate it. If it's within 10 degrees, it's fine. The reason is that GATS needs that array information to produce an upper and lower bound of what it expects your system should generate in a given month in its in the right orientation. So GATS, it's smart because they want to flag, like if I enter in that your system made 2,600 kilowatt hours, and by its own characteristics, it should never, in even the best, sunniest, most highest performance month, make 2,000. That's an error that's flagged. So it's an extra check on the system that if I put in a high number, or if your system reported a high number, SunTribe, my platform will pre-flag production, whether it's high or low. And then even if it is high, we can verify it and it's fine. It's just a really kick butt month. Then, I might have to validate by hand in GATS and say, yes, this was high, but I approve it. And it's also, it more often comes out, it's on the low side. And just to draw a comparison between SunTribe and other aggregators, our competitors, you're going to get me or another customer service person when you call and you deal with, because we're still small, but we hope to really make customer service the center of our business. I have people who are registered on SREC Trade where their production was low in a given month, and SREC Trade would not send that energy to GATS. It was held generation because it was low, and it's been since January, since there's been a resolve. They made no SRECs and no transactions. I don't know that, this is a real thing that comes up, where the service of the aggregator can mean the difference between SRECs getting made or the can getting kicked down the road to deal with an exceptional situation, or your inverter fails, or you have have to get something swapped out. You have to resync your inverter with your monitoring portal. How is that going to be dealt with in terms of getting you back minting SRECs? Which leads me to another thing is, once you have an SREC aggregator looking at your energy monthly, sometimes we even catch issues with your system before an installer do. And I know like Sunday and a lot of companies, they do a very good high fidelity effort in trying to catch when issues go wrong, but it may be the case that the aggregator flags an issue, in which case SunTribe, we want to get you the most SRECs. We know the different contact points at the installers. We can email you, system owner, CC the installer, and say, hey, looks like there's an issue with this site, with the system, and then you can work to a resolve. So it's interesting how an SREC aggregator can help with kind of overall system performance over time.
And then another question, and I think you answered it, but I just want to clarify because it saddens me. I went online 2019, and I believe you said that basically I wouldn't be able to do anything but calendar year 2022.
Yeah, these are like, and Mike, I'm sorry. These are like the hard conversations, what you just like don't want to have. It's like the parent-teacher conference with the kid who's really bad. I mean, yes, I know that installers were working so hard to like get the word out, and like, we couldn't get to everybody.
Yeah, no, well, like I said, I installed my own. I did, pulled my own permits, all that here in Charlottesville.
Yeah. The other thing, Mike.
No.
Sorry, I spoke over you, but
no.
The one thing we need to have is a revenue grade meter associated with your account. So it's the requirement of GATS in the state of Virginia that meters be RGM meters to plus or minus half a percent point. So if you have any of the modern inverters that have meter embedded are going to meet that standard. But what's your inverter?
I have the in-phase system. Microinverters. I have the IQ 7 Plus.
Yeah,
I think.
Then you're fine. Yeah, then you're fine. But yeah, that's good. I had a couple of people who like didn't get the Envoy system, and then they had to install it, and it's an extra cost. But if somebody has an older system, you got to make sure you have the RGM kit on there, or else we'll flag it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike, for your questions. Cheryl?
Sure. So I have a quick question. We're really talking here a lot about SRECs. I think there's also a carbon market as well. Is that at all accessible? I mean, you pointed out the three mechanisms for how you get the tax credit and the revenue, et cetera. How about the carbon attributes of the system?
I don't feel really comfortable talking because there's such a wide and varied market for how those are accounted for. I think if you are creating SRECs and selling those SRECs, I think that as an environmental benefit should probably be the only avenue that you pursue to basically cash in on the environmental attributes of your system. It really depends on the issuing, if some sort of certificate is issued on account of the environmental attributes of your system, and that the issuer has a permissive policy whereby if you're also selling SRECs, you can also generate offsets in their framework. So be it. But it's up to the, that might affect the legitimacy of that. There's a real big focus on avoiding dual counting, right?
Additionality, right? The issue of additionality, right?
Yeah. I mean, additionality is a little bit separate from what we're discussing in terms of SRECs. But yeah, when you talk about offsetting carbon, is the action taken, the investment made, et cetera, having an additional effect on removing more carbon and furthering the goals of the environmental movement, as opposed to just something where it's a net and it's yeah. So again, I think there are probably some sources that are not me that could probably answer that more elegantly and more correctly.
Well, since I have your attention and I don't see hand raised, really quickly, it's a technical one, minor. So are inverters now lasting the same length of time as your solar panels themselves, or are they needing a replacement like midway through? How's the technology evolved?
I mean, it's getting better. I mean, we don't have data on the newest systems being installed right now, but yeah, I mean, your panels should be lasting 20, 25 years. I mean,
Right.
You're seeing warranties that long for panels. You're seeing inverters warranted for, it varies widely. But yeah, I mean, they'll go bad. You might have to swap them out. We're seeing issues with, like a lot of systems. I mean, it's just speaking about what I care about. I just want to make sure the system is reporting the energy that it makes to a cloud, your monitoring site. So if your SolarEdge, or if your N-phase inverter, which came with a cell modem, the cell modem was a 4G technology and it had a 5-year data plan. When your 6 rolls around and your data plan runs out and 4G, you have to swap in either another modem, or you have to get your system connected to Wi-Fi. Those are more of the practical issues that are going to affect our ability to reliably and automatically make SRECs for a user. So it's, our goal and intent to get ahead of those issues. Like, for example, all of the 3G modems were just sunsetted, which caused a great deal of pain for anybody who's relying on automated reporting for systems. But almost all the modern systems that are internet, they can connect to a Wi-Fi connection, and we can report data on that, even if a cell comm goes down. I don't think I ended up in the place where your question started, so please bring me back, Cheryl.
No, that was great. I actually learned a lot. Thank you for moving into that direction. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Cheryl, do you have a system, or you represent kind of a larger body of
Well,
solar experts?
I am looking at doing solar at my house, and I'm in a new house, new place. So I'm looking at the economics. But I used to work at UVA, Cheryl Gomez. And so I was head of energy and utilities and operations there. So
very good. I believe UVA would be one place that would retire their own SRECs and not necessarily.
That's exactly right. With utility scale solar projects, one of the requirements of the PPA was that we owned all the environmental attributes of those solar systems. 32 megawatts worth of solar installation. So
absolutely. Yeah. Some people are doing swaps where, like, if a government organization, if they were to sell their SRECs, they could get the market price in Virginia, like a carve-out price, but they still want to make claims against energy. Like if the municipality has an energy goal, they could buy RECs from another source and create their own policy about what RECs would qualify to swap in. Could they be green E-RECs? Like, for example, US LEED certification requires green E-RECs to be purchased for if you wanted to do an arbitrage or a swap for 10 years, you could, or if you have a more permissive goal, you could do a swap for with a kind of a national REC or a US cited RECs in hydro or wind or solar in order to swap in for kind of a native localized solar REC if you don't have to make a claim against particular local solar, et cetera. And we work with larger institutions to make those decisions, because it's often an economic one. I mean, we want to all do the most good, right? And within the confines of the rules. And so leaving, a couple $100,000 on the table and to keep SRECs for certain institutions, private or governmental, doesn't make sense, because they can do the most good with those funds. Cool. Mike, I just saw you raise your hand.
Yes, I had a question. With the contracts, if I wanted to add panels to make my system a little bit larger, I'm looking into electric vehicle once, anybody has an electric vehicle
Look
on their
at you
line.
upgrading only after 3 years. All right.
Yeah, well, I'm making quite a bit extra. I'm switching over to
Yeah.
electric, heating and air, and
For sure.
changing as much as I can. But when I imagine the needs with an electric vehicle will be a little bit higher, and I may have to add about 4 or 5 more panels. And
Yep.
I didn't know if that's something that we can submit, because you said that you would monitor if we were making more than what we're supposed to be making.
You can absolutely add, you can add, we just update your generator and gas, and that would, you're just going to report more energy monthly on that. If you're in a contract that, I can't imagine. I mean, all that stuff is changeable. I think there's language in all the contracts that if you add, you just have to report it, and we'll make the update. But I can't see any reason why that wouldn't be a situation we could deal with. For sure. SRECs, everybody had enough of SRECs? We can't get enough of them over here at SunTribe. But yeah, I mean, to kind of bookend this this presentation, we, you can feel free to call us. I can put our direct phone number in the chat. It's right there. That will reach us. Again, we're a small group, so but we will return your phone call. Our email is SREC@SunTribeTrading.com. Like many Virginia installers, they have the ability to refer your system to us, or may already have done that, or you could go to SunTribeTrading.com and fill out what takes literally 3 minutes to put in system size, address, etc. And you can see that screen where it gives you all the graphs of what you would make. And go through that. Even if you're considering solar, right, you can do that to get estimates.
Well, thank you so much, Ian. That was a great presentation. You rocked all the questions.
Thanks, Heidi.
I learned so much.
Awesome. Well,
Great
yeah.
presentation. Yeah. I was just going to say great presentation, and thank you for sponsoring it, Sunday Solar too. Thank you.
Yeah, happy
thank you
to.
for joining.
Great. All right. Thanks all.